this. Bring this up. Now just remember, you are going to have these spots that get sticky, so you got to watch and kind of keep that floured. And I'm not putting my hands in my bags of flour or my flour containers because I don't want this to contaminate them. This time I'm going to get a little bread flour. So I'm just kind of mixing it up between the all-purpose flour and the bread flour. Okay, now for those of you who feel that you could knead your bread, this is where we're going to go from there. As you noticed before, I kind of pushed it out and then I made, and I'm just trying to keep it square. All right, so for those of you who want to try to knead the actual way, at this stage, let's say we just took it out of the bowl and plopped it down. We're going to take the top and we're going to fold it over on top of itself, and with the heels of our hands, we're just going to push it and we're going to turn it. We're going to lift up the top again, put it on top of itself, and push it with the heels of our hands. Turn a quarter turn, pick up the top, put it down on top of itself, and push it. I'm kind of rolling the dough as I push. Turn it, push. Now we've gone all the way around. That was 4 times. So we're going to do it again, but we're going to make sure that the surface we're working on is floured. And we're going to push, 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 push. Okay, we just did that again. Now at this point, let's say that I am a person who has a lot of shoulder pain and I can't do that again. I'm just like, oh, that killed me. I can't do it anymore. You actually could just let it sit here until you've regained some of that strength, or we can just go back to the push with our fingertips, the heels of our hands, barely. I mean, honestly, you wouldn't. I'm just barely doing this. Push. I'm going to use one hand to help push the other hand if I have to. And you'll notice that the dough is gaining a lot of elasticity. It's a lot more forgiving than you think it is. Okay. So I'm just kind of working it. I'm going to bring this half over here like we did before. And I'm going to push. Just using my hand. I can use my fingertips. Okay, so let's say at this point I'm just like, I am so tired. I just can't. Fine. Let it rest. It will forgive you for that. Just let it rest. Take a little break. Cover it up if you need to. Just take a paper towel and cover it up. Give yourself a 5-minute break. You could even be rinsing out your bowls or whatever if you need to. Feed your cat, feed your dog. Okay, wash your hands, come back, put some flour on your hands, and then start again. And if you feel ambitious, go ahead and try to do some rolling. And I'm barely pushing. This is not hard work for me. I'm just kind of giving it a push and a roll. Give it a quarter of a turn, push. When you let it rest, it may take a minute to kind of get the flour to incorporate the dough into itself. So you might have to do this a little extra, but you know what? This bread is so worth it. If you have kids at home, teach them how to do this. If you can make bread, you can meditate while you're doing it. And I love the way the flaxseed meal feels in this dough. I don't know what it's just kind of interesting. Okay, so now that I've been kneading it, it's getting sticky again. So I'm going to take some of my flour, apply it to my countertop or whatever it is that I'm using to knead my bread on. Kind of cover it up with some of that. Okay, I'm just going to take my little half break here by pushing. By the way, this recipe, you could actually use this to make a bread, like a traditional loaf, or two of them actually, or you could make one loaf of bread and then use the other half to make rolls, dinner rolls, or cinnamon buns, or goodness, just about anything. A pizza. It's half the size at this stage that it will be when we're done. Okay, so I'm pushing. I'm hardly using any arm power at all. I mean, I'm obviously having to use some, but it's just not killing me. Like I said, I've had several people say I can't do it. It's too hard. It's not that hard. If you have a family member at home who would like cut this in half for you, like you do part of it and they do the other part, there you go. It's great therapy, mentally and physically. Okay, just keep working it, and you're, like I said, you're gonna feel this little stickiness here. That's what we're trying to get rid of, is the sticky. I'm gonna use a little bit more of my bread flour. And after the initial kneading with the first part here, you can put this in the refrigerator, wrap it up good in plastic wrap, put some, I do recommend that you put some oil on your hands, like vegetable oil, and wrap it up with saran wrap or whatever type of plastic wrap you have, tight, and put it in the refrigerator. And you can come back to it tomorrow. Just take it out of the refrigerator and let it thaw, and it will rise as it's thawing. And then treat it like you would for the second rising. So you would cut it into, into half. Just cut it in half after it's come out of the refrigerator and thawed and risen. Not thawed, but warmed up to room temperature. And then you can shape it into your bread loaves and let it rise again, or into bread rolls, just however you want your bread to be. Okay, I think we are at... Yep, it's feeling absolutely perfect at this stage. I am going to give it, I want to see. So I'm going to bring this together. And since I've been doing this for 30 years, I can tell you that you get to the point where you can feel it in your hands. You know exactly where the bread needs to be as far as have you kneaded it enough. And this actually has. It's not sticking to my unfloured surface here, and it has this perfect texture. So what I do at this phase, my mom used to call this spanking it, and she would, that's to kind of get that smooth surface. If you don't have the power to do that, just hold it and drop it, and drop it, and drop it. Just, you don't have to throw it down, just drop it, and you'll get the same results. Okay, so now I'm not going to clean this bowl out. I'm sure there's people out there cringing right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my vegetable spray, it's canola oil, and I'm just going to spray right on top of that leftover flour and other ingredients. And I'm going to take my dough and I'm going to drop it, and then I'm going to pick it up and drop it. Now you can use butter if you want to. I prefer to just use this canola spray because it's just fine. But I do have it, high all the way around the edges, because this dough is going to rise up and get very big in this bowl. And we want that, we don't want it to stick. Okay, so I'm going to take a clean dishcloth. I'm going to cover it up like this, and I'm going to put it in my warm oven. Now remember, I preheated my oven to 170, and then I turned my oven off and opened the door. I'm going to now put this, it's been at least a half an hour. I'm going to put this in my oven. If you aren't sure, you do not want that oven to be hot in any way, shape, or form, or you will overdo the temperature for your bread to rise. I have a lot of friends who use the top of their refrigerator. I don't happen to have any room on top of my refrigerator, and that's why I do it this way. So find a warm spot in your house. And put your flour is raw, and it's not something that you should eat. So I don't scoop this off the edge of my countertop and over my hand, because I have dogs and I don't want them getting into raw flour. So I will take a wet dish towel and clean this up, and get this all sorted out. You could leave it, because you will be working here again in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, when your dough is completely risen. And we'll come back and look at that in probably 2 hours. It's going to take, on a day where it's really cold, my house is not particularly warm. It is in a warmer oven, but every single solitary season, your bread is going to rise at a different rate. And in the wintertime, it does take it a little bit longer. The addition of the flaxseed meal may also make it take a little bit longer. So just be patient. Check on it in about an hour. If it's warmer outside, 45 minutes. You want it to double in size. So while my bread is rising, I've wiped off my kitchen countertop with just warm water. I'm not using any chemicals. I don't need to clean it. There was nothing that's going to cause any problems. Just good hot water and a cloth dish towel. I'm going to leave my vegetable spray out. This is from Costco. It's the Kirkland brand. Because I'm going to need it for my 2 bread loaf pans. I'm going to leave out my flour because at this point I don't know yet. I might need some more. I don't think I do. It had a really nice elastic, really good tight feel to it. So I don't think I'm going to need to incorporate any more flour. But I'm not going to put it away yet because I don't want to have to go back and get it back out again if I do need it. Just once is plenty for me. I'm also soaking my rings to get the bread dough out. You know how I had them on when I was initially working. So just soaking my rings in a little bit of water will help loosen that up. And if you have an old toothbrush or something, you can kind of give them a little brush if you did manage to get a lot of dough into the cracks and crevices of your jewelry. But I do this all the time, like seriously all the time. I don't like to think about what germs and bacteria could be living in my jewelry. Would be a horrifying thought. Okay, so now we just wait, and I think what I will do in the meantime is sort of clean up my kitchen. I need to unload my dishwasher. That's what I usually do in the morning, and get everything nice and tidy. And then when I come back, I will have had some more coffee, and we'll be ready to divide out the loaf, the dough, into 2 loaves and get them ready. There is a technique I use for really good loaves of bread, and we'll talk a little bit about how to store it and what you can do with it once you've made it, some of the nifty fun things. So we'll be back in a little bit. Since I'm using a rather primitive video taping system through my phone, and I'm not real techy, so I just kind of know what works and what doesn't work. I remembered that I would need to come back and kind of get the video going again before it phased out, and I would have to start all over, and I'm not doing that this time. I wanted to give you guys some ideas. If you've not baked bread from scratch before, one thing that you can do if you do have a problem with kneading is use your large, heavy-duty mixer. I have a KitchenAid that has a bread hook. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but I'll go retrieve mine in a moment and show you what it looks like. You still have to knead it for about 10 minutes, and everything else is the same. So you would use the exact same recipe, and you would put the ingredients into the bowl in the exact same way that we just did it. Keeping in mind, though, that I've noticed in my KitchenAid that unless I physically lift up that bowl, I can't get the honey without, with the bread hook. I have to actually scoop it up with a spatula. Just take one of these and kind of go down into the bottom of that bowl and dig that honey, because it will just stick to the bottom of the bowl in my case. Now, I suppose I could add the water. I could put the sugar, the salt, the honey, and the warm water, and then the flour and the yeast. But I prefer to have the water on top of all of my other ingredients. That's just me. But anyway, so you could use a bread hook in a big KitchenAid. Now, just a typical mixing blade in a hand mixer like this, that will not work. It will tear up a hand mixer. So go to Goodwill, go to a pawn shop if you've got one. I know I've seen them, the KitchenAid that is big enough and heavy duty enough and strong enough to do a bread. It's just a great way to have a nice homemade bread without hurting your arms or using a part of your body that is just broken down for whatever reason. So there you go. I think it's also good therapy. Sometimes people who are in pain don't realize that the reason they're in pain is because they're not using those muscles. But I won't go down that path today. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to tell you is if during this phase of waiting for this bread to sit here and double in size, you're bored and you don't have anything else to do and you're like, well, what am I going to do with this bread? Here is a list of suggestions. If you're not a vegan and you have these things on hand, or you can get them relatively quickly because you've only got like an hour, cook up some bacon and drain it. Set it aside and either grate some cheese or get yourself some grated cheese and mix the bacon and the cheese together and set that aside. And when you have removed your bread from the oven after the first rise, when it's in the bowl like we just did, that's called the first rise. Okay, so now you've got your bacon and your cheese. You're going to take your bread dough out after the first rise. You're going to put it out on the counter. You're going to take a sharp knife and cut it in half. It'll give you 2 loaves. And then you're going to roll it out. And I'll show you how to do that. But while it's flat, almost like a big long rectangle piece of pizza dough, spread within a 1/2 inch of around the edges, kind of in the middle of that thing, the mixture of the bacon and the cheese, and then roll it up real tight. And we'll talk about how to pinch the ends and get that all in there. And then you can bake it just like that if you want to. Or you can take some dental floss or some sewing thread and cut it like you would with when you're making cinnamon rolls. And have like, bacon cheese pinwheels. And I've heard it's really good. I've never done it, but I've seen it and people have just raved about it. You can also do that with ham. If you don't like bacon, or you can use, the turkey bacon, whatever, get creative. You can even do the same basic thing with sausage. I would not do that with a sausage egg mixture because the egg would just probably turn into rubber after all that cooking. Because remember, you still have to cook it after you've done the rolling up. It's still raw dough. So you can do the exact same thing with cinnamon and white sugar, and you've got your rectangle rolled out, and then you're going to spread with a pastry brush. I know I have one in here somewhere. It looks a little gnarly, but it gets the job done. I've had it for decades, probably, I would say 30 years. But anyway, so you melt your butter and then you spread your butter out. Don't go all the way to the edge. Just, like a good 1/4 inch, maybe the width of your finger, 1/2 inch around, and keep that just, your dough, and you're going to go in those lines with your butter, okay? Then you're going to take a cinnamon and a white sugar mixture. I would say a 2-to-1. So 2 tablespoons of, well, not even 2-to-1, we'll say 4-to-1. 4 tablespoons of white sugar to 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Unless you really happen to like cinnamon. I don't like it to kick me in the mouth. And you can add a little bit of fresh grated nutmeg to that as well. Mix that all together and then sprinkle it on top of that butter. And then do the same thing. Roll it nice and tight. Make sure that you're rolling it tight. Otherwise, you're going to have just a mess. So good and tight, and again, I'll show you how to do that. Pinch off the ends, flip it over, use some dental floss or some sewing thread to cut. You just slip it underneath the rolled up thing, cross it, and it'll cut straight through nice and tight. And then cut side down goes on your baking sheet. They need to rise again for about 30 minutes, and then you'll bake them. And you got delicious cinnamon rolls made straight from your house. And that's the thing I want to say here. If you can bake, if you can sew, if you can paint, if you can draw, you will always have a gift for someone. There's never a time when you're going to be at a loss. It will be appreciated, it will be loved, it will be cherished. And here's my final thought on that. If it isn't, if you take the time to bake something delicious for someone, paint a beautiful picture for someone, sew something delightfully cute for someone, an apron, a pincushion, whatever, and that person accepts it but does not appreciate it, they need to be stricken from your list. Not your life, just your list. You don't give to those who don't appreciate it. If all they want is a high value item, then you can't provide it. And you need to let that stress go and just tell yourself, I enjoyed making this and I enjoyed giving this. And if that's not appreciated, then it doesn't need to be something in your life that's causing you anxiety or panic or stress or unhappiness. All right, and when I come back, our bread will have risen, I hope, before my camera times out. Like I said, I'm not a techie. Don't pretend to be. And we're going to do the punch down, and then we're going to divide it, and I'm going to show you guys how to do a really pretty bread loaf. All right, bakers, I am back. My bread has risen, and I don't know if you can see, there's some little bubbles that formed during this process. So it has a lot of yeast gas. And when I push down, let me remove this ring again. When I push down, I'm going to use my fist, and I'm just going to punch it straight down the middle, but I'm not really going to punch it. I'm just going to kind of take my hand and push. And a lot of that is going to release. And you're going to hear kind of a whoosh sound. And that's how you know, and it's going to be very light to the touch. And that's how you're going to know that it actually did what it needed to do. You need to make sure before you do it, remember we put it in and then we flipped it over so that it had some of the canola oil on top. And that kind of helps keep it from drying out and pulling like it did a little bit here. I obviously didn't have quite enough oil on there. But here we go. We're going to push. And there's that whoosh. And it will start to pull away from the bowl. I don't know if you can see it. It's just kind of gently moving away from the sides of the bowl as that yeasty gas is going away. And then I'm just going to kind of help. I always do this. And then I'm going to flip the bowl over and let it fall onto my countertop that I've cleaned with just water. Remember we talked about that? Okay, I have 2 bread pans here. All right, and what I'm going to do now is just let it sit there, but I'm going to take a sharp knife. You could use scissors if you wanted to. Hang on just a moment. Putting it on my cutting board. All right, I'm not going to do anything else to this yet. I want to cut it in half while it's still partially in that resting phase. So I'm going to get as even to 2, halves of this as I can get. In my case, there's always one that's slightly bigger than the other, and I don't care. Kind of follows that 3-foot rule when you're sewing something. Alrighty, so I have a loaf here, sort of. A lot of people would be like, well, just throw that in the bread pan. Nope. Here's how we're going to make it the best, absolutely the best loaf. County fair worthy loaf of bread. All right. We're going to press it out. I'm just using my hands. We don't have to re-knead it. I'm just doing this to get this shape right here. I want kind of a rectangle. Now at this point, if you were going to make a pizza, you could, at this point, make your pizza. You could roll this out into a circle or a square, put, cook it for about 10 minutes, take it out of the oven, put your ingredients on it, and then cook it again and you'd be done. But we're not doing that. We're going to make a loaf. Just plain bread. But remember when we were talking about that bacon and cheese and sausage and cheese and cinnamon and sugar? Okay, this is the stage right here. You get it out like this. Make that rectangle. Kind of shape it. Bread is very malleable at this point. Bread dough is. Okay. So this right here, which is about the width of a finger, is your no man's zone. You're not going to put anything in that zone if you're going to make a filled pinwheely kind of thing. Everything else, so your sausage and your cheese, or your bacon and your cheese, you just put it all in there. And then you roll it up. I'm going to move this so that we can see it at its best. Okay. So I've shaped it into this nice rectangle. Oh, before I start rolling, I do want to do this. When you have a dirty dishwasher, if you have a dishwasher in your home, this is my favorite tip. And you need to spray a baking pan, dish, whatever, with a cooking spray. If your dishwasher has dirty dishes in it, open up your dishwasher and hold that pan over the dishwasher and spray it over the dishwasher. You're going to run the dishwasher anyway. I can't stand having that cooking spray in my sink because then I have to clean my sink. I don't want to get overspray all over my kitchen. So I just do it over the open dishwasher door. There's not a whole lot of overspray, and I don't have to worry that it's going into areas that I don't want it.